Hello everyone and welcome to the Brief Earth Creates YouTube channel. And today I am creating a card featuring the Tree Hugger stamp set and Chibitronics sticker lights. This fun and whimsical card features this tree hugger critter image, which we're going to start by coloring up with my Copic markers. First I'm just laying down a base coat color for the mustache, and for his body I'm using Y000 for the mustache and YR000 for the body's base coat. Next I'm moving on to Y15 to kind of add the long flicking strokes in his mustache. So I'm going to start with a dark color and kind of work dark to light, just going in all of these little nooks and pulling out the color into towards the center of his mustache. Now I'm moving on to Y13, and I'm just following along those same flicking lines that I created with the Y15 to pull the color towards the center of his mustache. And now I'm moving on to my darkest color, Y19. So you can see these strokes are pretty long because I want to stretch the color pretty far into the center. Now I'm going in with Y17. Going in the same areas, just adding a little bit more color into the highlights. Gonna deepen the contrast with all the different hair colors. And now I'm coming back with the Y15. And then back in with the Y13, just spreading a little bit more color around, and then finishing off the blending with the Y11. And then just coming in one more time with the Y17 just to darken add more dark hairs into his mustache. Now I'm moving on to coloring his body, and I'm starting out by adding the shadow in with the YR16. I'm going around the top of his head, under his arms, and around the perimeter of his body, and around the inside of his legs. Oh, and then I'm going right behind the mustache as well. Now I'm moving on to YR14, and just following along those same shadow lines, and bringing the color in towards the center a little bit more. And then I'm moving on to YR12. Trying to keep a little bit more highlights on the legs and the feet. It's kind of hard to do when the area gets smaller. And then I'm finishing off with the YR000. And blending that all out. Okay, now I'm coming in with the YR18, and I'm adding kind of the flicking strokes into his body as well to make it look like the wild fur. And now I'm coming in with YR16. And then adding some more long flick strokes with YR14 on his head and his body. And then coming in with the YR12 just to kind of blend that all out a little bit. And I'm coming in back in one more time with the YR18. See, as I'm pulling the strokes towards the center of the head, straight towards the highlight area, but curving around. And there we go, there's the coloring of the tree hugger critter. And now we're moving on to building the card. So I die cut the stitched rectangle using the Card Basics dies from Kindred stamps, and I pre-created masks for the trees so that I could ink blend over the tree areas and I can protect them for my coloring later. And I used a piece of vellum to trace the location, the circles shapes of the top of the trees, so that I can replicate those circles in the exact same spots onto my card base, so I know where to place the sticker lights. And they don't have to be perfect, just kind of need to know where the center of the trees are so that the light shines directly from the center. So the white little square is for the battery holder. So whenever you push down on the battery holder, the lights will light up in the trees. So now I'm going to use a pencil to trace the battery so I can start creating my circuits to connect the copper tape from the battery to the sticker lights, creating a positive track and a negative track. So I use a ruler to kind of keep my lines straight, and I'm denoting those circuit lines with a positive and a negative just to kind of keep those in track straight in my head. And so now I'm creating the positive lines, and I'm kind of going with a top and bottom circuit versus, you know, a two-line circuit, just to keep it a little bit neater. And now I'm placing a positive to denote the positive circuits. Now I'm using liquid glue to glue down the battery holder in the designated area. So now now that this is attached, we can start adding the copper tape. So I want to have the copper tape connected in the longest line as possible. So I start by, for each sign, so I start by creating the negative and running it from left to right. And then I just have to add 2 more strips for the negative side, one connecting to the battery and then one connecting to the middle light. And now I'm going to create the positive side, and I'm going to wrap it around the top of the battery holder and navigate it around onto the positive track. You have to make sure that your positive and negative circuits do not touch, or else your light up mechanism will not function correctly. So once again, I wanted to create the longest kind of connection on the positive track, so I run all the way from the battery holder itself to the farthest light on the right hand side. So now I can use my scoring tool to kind of flatten the circuits down to make sure they have a secure connection to the card base. And I'm coming in and adding the last 2 circuits for the positive route on the middle light and the left-hand light. Now I'm coming in with some conductive fabric patches to cover up, to secure the connections that were just taped on or were not part of the single connected area, just to have a better conductivity. And I'm using my score tool once again to make sure that those are secure. Okay, now I'm moving on to my sticker lights. And I want to denote one more time the positives and the negatives. So I place the sticker lights in the right direction, because as you can see, there's a positive and a negative side on the sticker lights. So if you don't place them in the right direction, then your circuit will not work. So the left sticker is a red light, the middle one is a yellow, and the right one is a pink or purple. I think it looks more like it's a pinkish purple. And so I'm going in and ink blending the card background with Distress Oxide Tumble Glass ink. I'm just doing a base coat on the outside of the card around all the edges. And you have to be careful with the masking tape on these trees, because since the tree material is so small with spikes, it's easy to pull up whenever you're going around with your ink blending brush. And I'm just creating one nice light coat of the tumbled glass color, excuse me. Now I'm coming in with the broken china and just going around the edges to deepen up the edges. Just add darker shading on all four sides. And then I'm coming back in with the tumbled glass just to kind of blend those two colors together a little bit better. And now to make the background a little bit more whimsical looking, I'm using the long hair stencil from Kindred stamps to give it kind of a dimensional background. And I'm using some post-it tape to tape the stencil to the card front so it doesn't move whenever we're ink blending. So first I'm coming in with some Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink, and I'm using that towards the outside of the card, on the outer edges. I'm just going along basically where we put down the broken china Distress Oxide ink. And then I'm going to use the broken china Distress Oxide ink in the center of the card so it is still a lighter card towards the center. And so now I'm peeling off the masks. As you can see, I added a little bit of splattering with the Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink to add a little bit more texture to the background. And with the masks, the tree areas were protected from the ink blending. So now I'm coming in with my N5 Copic marker and adding some tree bark lines as the tree bark's going to be white and gray, and then the tree tops are going to be bright colors. And now I'm coming in with the N3 and kind of extending the shadow towards the base of the tree. So it kind of looks more like a coconut tree kind of bark, I guess, where it looks layered. And now I'm coming in with N1, just pulling that color out a little bit more. And now I'm coming in with my darkest shade, N7, and going back over that top shadow line. And then I'm coming in with the N5 and stretching the shadow a little bit more. And then I'm coming in with the N3 again. And one more time with the N1. See how even though we added all of these shades of the neutral marker, how the trees still look pretty white. Okay, so now we're working on the right hand tree, which is going to be more of a pink. And so I'm starting with the base coat of RV000, and then I'm adding a base coat to the center tree, which is going to be yellow. And I'm using Y000 for that. And then the right tree is going to be red, and so I'm using R000 to create a base coat for that tree. And so I'm going to start with the left-hand tree, the red tree, and just like the tree hugger critter, I'm going to use the long flicks to add some color into the tree tops. And I'm starting with the R08 as my darkest color. Just kind of identifying where I want these lines to circle towards the center, how I want to stretch these lines out. And now I'm coming in with the R05 because I want to make sure that these kind of swooshes circle in towards the center, kind of like water circling in towards the drain. And now I'm using R02. Just adding a little bit more color in there, a little bit more shading. And then R01. And then I'm going to come back in with R08 one more time. Just deepen those shadows a little bit more. I think going in with 2 layers of color always adds a little bit more dimension. And then coming in with R05 again, just spreading the color out a little bit more. The tree itself is going to be pretty light, but you still want to add some deep shadows so that it's a little bit more dimensional. And then R02 one more time. See how it's starting to look really wispy? I really like the look of these trees. It's a lot of fun. Now we're moving on to our right hand side tree, and it's going to be a really bright pink. So I'm coming in with the darkest color of RV09. And even though the tree's kind of cut in half, you still want the wispy lines to look like it's coming from a full tree direction, so the lines on the right hand side are still really curved. Now I'm coming in with RV06 and then jumping down to RV02. And then I'm coming back with the RV09 once again just to deepen the shadows a little bit more. And then I'm coming in with RV06, extending the color. And then just blending it out with RV02. And so I'm moving on to the last tree, the center tree, and I'm starting with the Y08. It's my dark color. Just going around in that circle once again, creating those long curved flicks, and moving on to the Y06. All curving towards the center, creating kind of a wispy look. And then moving on to Y04. I'm sorry if this video makes you dizzy. It was just a lot easier to color these by turning the paper versus stretching my hand around. I'm coming in one more time with Y08. Then Y06, and then Y04. And then I decided that the Y08 didn't contrast enough from the other yellow shades of yellow, so I'm coming in with Y17 to kind of create more of a contrast within the yellows. And then since I added the darker shade, I came back in with the Y08 one more time to kind of blend it a little bit better with the rest of the yellows. So I already used the grass die cut to die cut 2 layers of a grass border for the bottom of the card, and I used some Distress Oxide inks to add some more texture and shading to the tree layers. And then now I'm taking some Vintage Photo Distress ink, and I'm just going around the edges of the entire edge of the card to just kind of give it more of a distressed, earthy look. Okay, and now we have the card background done. And so I'm going to place the tree hugger critter in the center there, in between the 2 left-hand sided trees. And then I'm gluing down the sentiment, "I care about you a lot," that I die cut with the sentiment strips dies. And that finishes the card front. And now, as you can see, I already added some foam tape to the card base. And I'm just peeling off the backing and the foam tape before placing the card front onto the card back. So as you press on the critter, the trees light up. And so I just wanted to add a little bit more detail to the front of the card. So I'm using some bright and colorful enamel dots to add a little bit more embellishment. And I'm using some pink, orange, and yellow enamel dots to match with the trees. And there you have it, a light up card featuring the Tree Hugger stamp set from Kindred Stamps and sticker lights and copper tape from Chibitronics. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Hope you come back soon for some more interactive paper crafting fun.